Hey everyone, welcome to Chapter 3, Part 2, where we are going to be talking all about capitalism. So, when we talk about classical liberalism, we are often going to talk about capitalism, as capitalism is kind of the economic side of classical liberalism. So, when we talk about economics, we have to talk about scarcity. So, humans have unlimited needs and wants. But the earth has limited amounts of resources, land, labor, and capital. With this limited amount of resources, it creates scarcity. So, how do you decide how to allocate all resources? You have to answer three basic economic questions: what to produce, how to produce it, and who gets it. You'll remember these three questions from Unit 1. So, economic systems answer those questions differently. And there are three basic economic systems that all other fall into. And the fourth, traditional economies are rare. So, market economy, also known as capitalism, free market, private enterprise. Planned economy, known as socialism, communism, centrally planned public enterprise, or a mixed economy that can range from welfare capitalism to socialist economies. So, you've probably heard left wing, right wing outside of this course, and even at the start of this course. When we talk about right wing, we're talking about capitalism, individualism, and we're talking about private direction, right? We're talking about free enterprise, laissez faire. All of these on here either fall in left or right. Private, once you hear private, it's going to be right. Public, once you hear public, it's going to be left. Planned economy, left. Free enterprise, right. Laissez faire, right. Command economy, left. Invisible hand, right. Mixed economy, smack dab in the middle. Collectivism, left. Communism, left. Capitalism, right. Welfare capitalism, middle. Socialism, left. Interventionist, left. Individualist, right. Individual initiative, right. Common good, left. Social welfare, left. So all of them fall in somewhere left to right. This is a really good slide to kind of help you place where things are and which things are related to which. Of course, a copy of these slides will be in your bright space. So, the origins of capitalism. So, mercantilism existed prior to the 19th century. So, competition between nations for gold, silver, and power. Protective tariffs, monopolies, limited international trade, colonies, and the mother country, high level of government regulations. A good example of this is the Hudson's Bay Company. Okay, so in mercantilism, you had the influx of like new economies, right? Trading beaver pelts in a completely new country to them was a very new economy. But the money from that really went to the mother country or the monarchy. And they had monopolies in these areas. When we look at Canada, for example, the Hudson's Bay had a monopoly and very little competition over other groups when it came to trading in what is now Canada. So the Reformation, the Industrial Revolution, and the classical liberalism movement all led to this increased capitalism, this increased desire to have capitalism. So the Protestant Reformation The value of hard work was increased, as well as having material growth. The Industrial Revolution, new transportation, population explosion, and success in Europe. And then the liberal movement, right? Merchants complained about government restrictions, they complained about competitions, right? Not as much competition, and believed that the economy should be free to follow natural laws such as supply and demand. And they believed people were motivated more by self interest and competition, which encouraged better production by workers. So, Richard Hooker said this about the Industrial Revolution: the most far reaching, influential transformation of human culture since the advent of agriculture 8 or 10,000 years ago. The consequence of this revolution would change irrevocably human labor, consumption, family structure, social structure, and even the very soul and thoughts of the individual. We aren't going to do that. I'm going to skip that. Sorry, that's for my in class students. And as I mentioned yesterday, Adam Smith is the single most important person when you talk about capitalism. Okay. So he believed that the strength of nations rested on goods produced, not gold. It's not about how much gold you have, it's how much goods you produce. Laws and restrictions hindered rather than promoted economic growth. Said that there's no need to plan the economy. If people are free to pursue their own self interest, the sum of their individual actions would automatically work for the betterment of society. Believed in the invisible hand, right? There's no need for your hand or the government hand to push things. The invisible hand will push things because people are free to pursue their self interests. They will automatically work for the betterment of society. And he believed that government should only interfere to protect the country against foreign enemies, ensure competition, maintain law and order, and protect individual property rights, which is laissez-faire. Other characteristics of capitalism: self reliance, initiative, hard work, the necessity of private property, profit motive, price system, supply and demand, competition, inequalities of wealth. Answering the three basic questions: what goods and services to produce? In capitalism, it's consumer demand. We produce what consumers want in capitalism. How to produce: competition of suppliers, quality, and price, right? So, how to produce the goods: if it's cheaper and you can get good quality in China, for example, then that's where we are going to produce it. Who should produce the goods and services, or who should get the goods and services, are those who can afford them, right? A price system. I'm going to skip this video of Milton Friedman. No, we're going to watch it.
There is an enormous amount of poverty in the world everywhere. There is no system that's perfect. There's no system that's going to eliminate completely poverty in whatever sense. The question is, which system has the greatest chance? Which is the best arrangement for enabling poor people to improve their lot? And on that, the evidence of history speaks with a single voice. I do not know any exception to the proposition that if you compare like with like, the freer the system, the better off the ordinary poor people have been. Ask yourself what it is that assures these garment workers in Hong Kong a good wage. Not high by Western standards, but high enough to enable them to live far better than most people in the world. It's not government or trade unions that do it. These workers do well because there's competition for their labor and skills. When a businessman faces trouble, a market threatens to disappear, or a new competitor arises, there are two things he can do. He can turn to the government for a tariff or a quota or some other restriction on competition, or he can adjust and adapt. In Hong Kong, the first option is closed. Hong Kong is too dependent on foreign trade so that the government has simply had to adopt a policy of complete non interference. That's tough on some individuals, but it's extremely healthy for the society as a whole. Only the businessmen who can adapt, who are flexible and adjustable, survive, and they create good employment opportunities for the rest. The complete absence of tariffs or any other restrictions on trade is one of the main reasons why Hong Kong has been able to provide such a rapidly rising standard of life for its people.
So Milton Friedman is one of those thinkers that really advocates for capitalism, and you would have heard him speak, and really got that sense that he advocates for a completely free market, one in which Smith envisioned. So the pros of capitalism, and Milton Friedman did a really good job of going over some of these pros, right? So the market gives producers an incentive to produce goods the public wants. The market provides incentive to acquire useful skills. A wide variety of goods and services is available. There are incentives to use resources efficiently. Competition encourages good quality at lower prices. Productivity is rewarded by higher profits, and it fosters self reliance. And it's possible to become very wealthy. So, here are some examples of the benefits of capitalism: growth in the middle class. The rapid industrialization around the world is promoted by the ability to profit from innovations. The growth of the US and other consumer countries compared to those nations with higher levels of socialism. Um, and the current technology revolution has been spurred by the benefits of competition. Some of the cons: exploitation is very common in capitalism, environmental disregard, there's no social safety net. If you lose your job, hopefully you've saved up money because there's nothing there to help you. There's no economic security. If there's an oil crash and you work in oil, too bad. Helping the less fortunate is left to charity. So no tax dollars get spent on things like food banks and so on and so forth. It's just left to individual people helping that through charity. There's a large and growing wealth gap, power that comes with money, and then that boom bust economy. So I have a video here. This guy I first saw on TikTok. He wanted to show wealth through rice. And I really liked it, so I wanted to show it here. And you could argue that this video helps show the pros or the cons of capitalism. It's totally based on your opinion, but it really does a good job of showing how little the vast majority of people know about wealth.
So if 1 grain of rice is $100,000, that means that's what $1 million looks like. It's 10 grains of rice right there, as you can see. And a billion is about.
So I'll just stop it there. $100,000, 1 grain of rice, right? Very few people, well, I'm just going to say the vast majority of people have never seen a bank account that has $100,000 in it. right? I could work all year as a teacher and not earn 100,000 all year, let alone have that amount of money in my net worth.
10,000 grains of rice, which I have counted before, would not recommend doing that again. But here's what's crazy, guys, is that here's Elon's 2020 net worth. It was $30 billion, which is that much rice. It's about 14 pounds of rice. But here's what's crazier. Let's go look at his 2021 net worth, $195 billion. It's taking up the entire screen. And I'm just going to say that this is probably one of the largest mounds of rice I've ever seen. 93 pounds, 93 pounds, where each grain of rice is $100,000. But what's crazier is that Bill Gates' entire net worth is $122 billion. That means in one single year, Elon Musk grew his net worth from 30 all the way to $195 billion and gained that much net worth in a year, which is more than Bill Gates' worth completely. That's crazy. Here's some other stats about his wealth. With his net worth, he can actually buy 3.62 million top of the line Tesla Model 3s. He could buy every single team in the NBA and NFL combined. And he's so rich that the average American spending $1 is the equivalent of him spending $2 million. Since his net worth went up $165 billion in the last year, we can calculate the following. In 2020, per month, he made $13.75 billion a month. Per week, that's $3.17 billion per week. Per day, that's $452 million a day. And per hour, that's $18.83 million an hour, $313,920 per minute. And per second, he makes $5,232 per second in 2020. The average US worker makes about $47,000 a year. And in 2020 alone, Elon could make this entire salary in 9 seconds. There are
So those stats were pretty crazy, right? The average worker in America, Elon Musk makes that in 9 seconds. Um, and so you can go either way with this. You can argue that that's horrible, right? Under capitalism, that no one works that hard to earn a average salary in 9 seconds, right? When he's sleeping, when his eyes are closed, 9 seconds, he's made the same amount as the average worker, right? In 9 seconds. And then even that pile of rice, where the majority of people don't even see one grain of rice in terms of like accumulated wealth, and he's got a pile, right, of $100,000, right? And then on the other side, people are like, that's that's one of the good things about capitalism is you're striving and you have the ability to make that amount of money, which gives people initiative, right? It pushes people to try to accumulate that type of wealth for themselves. So it's totally up to you right now. Do you think that that's okay, right? That amount of money should be allowed to be made? Or do you think government should step in to kind of tax that or decrease that? Because what's happening in capitalism, and one of those cons, is there's a wage gap, right? There's people with lots and lots of money and people with very little. And do you think that it's okay to have that wage gap because we have a lot of initiative, a lot of drive, a lot of self-interest? Or do you believe that that gap should be decreased through government intervention? And your answer to that will be probably based on your ideology. Just try to go to the next slide. Nope. Okay, let's see this again. There we go. So in capitalism, you have probably heard this, the boom bust cycle, right? So we always have peaks and dips, recessions, maybe depressions, and then we have really highs. Okay, so that's just how capitalism is. So I've got two videos to end off part two. The first one is a rap battle. It's a little bit cringy, but there's a lot of really good stuff in here in terms of the arguments for and against capitalism, right? So you have two people who are arguing um, on whether capitalism is better or socialism is better. So here it is.
See, it's a revolution. Capitalism's days are numbered. Then there goes our freedom. If socialism wins, America loses. We have nothing to lose but our chains. And our civilization. Learn some history. Private property and free markets built modern day society. And modern society is the problem. Two per March of history. Thank you.
Enjoy the show, boys.
Look at this theater. Look at all of this plenty. This is capitalism. So capitalism's diabetes? Shh. Got it. Sorry. Your whole world is coming apart. I pity you.
America is once again at ideological war. After decades of post-war consensus, the great debate between capitalism and socialism has captured the public square. And no two men have more fervently fought this battle than socialist philosopher Karl Marx and classical liberal economist Ludwig von Mises. Marx versus Mises. Mises versus Marx. The march of history continues.
Workers of the world, assemble. It's time for the ruling classes to tremble. I'm the people's hero, the MVP, MARX. Yeah, you know me. Let's go back to when men were free. We hunted and gathered communally, but get ready. Cause here comes the twist. A villain appears called a capitalist. He puts the proletariat in chains, exploits our labor in pockets of gains. Through slick ads, he tricks lads and ladies in kind. Selling fake needs, he poisons our hearts and minds. He rots our soul through alienation, pursuing limitless accumulation. He works us into an early grave. Through debt steals back the money we save. Greed is the gospel, profit God. The rich get richer, the graft and fraud. The poor get poor, but you don't care. Doesn't that sound lazy, unfair? 200 years I've been singing this song. Now my chorus is 99% strong. The revolution's here, it's time to repent. Your moment is over, your capital spent. This is history's lesson. You think he's right? Listen. All we want is progression. We've had bourgeois oppression. So we live for the truth. As we tighten our boots. Who's right, who's wrong? Left, right, left, now the march is on. Todd Marks, nice to meet you. My name's Ludwig. Call me teacher, the master of markets, the Austrian boss. You don't like profits? Well, let's talk loss. The problem with your plan is nobody wins except Stalin, Pol Pot, Ho Chi Minh, Lenin, Mugabe. Remember Berlin? They built a wall to keep their people in. Your theories have a rotten foundation. Built on control, not cooperation. Centralized power completely corrupts. Real people suffer, violence erupts. Your system depends on the very same people you decry as greedy, bourgeois, and evil. If we're not fit to run our own lives, why would you expect our votes to be wise? If you really want to help people rise up, unleash the free market, let their lives up. It was capitalism, not a socialist plan. Sank billions in India, China, Japan. Everyone has a unique purpose and plan. No one solution can serve the whole land. Each individual has their own voice. The heart of my theory is freedom and choice. This is history's lesson. The market's a blessing. Let's pursue expression. Living free from aggression. So we look for the truth. With the freedom of the truth. Who's right, who's wrong? Left, right, left. left, now the march is on. Free marketeers love to play this game. Mao kills billions, Marx gets blamed. It's deceptive, dishonest, plain unfair. Did I drive the tanks at Tiananmen Square? Man, I'm a humanist. You can check my receipts, but you gotta break eggs if you wanna eat. Don't like violence? It meant defeat. Then I'll call this revolution complete. Until then, let's get a few things straight. I'm not shaping the future, I'm embracing our fate. My utopian forebears weren't that specific, but this analysis is highly scientific. Every social system has governing laws. Capitalism? Doomed because the system generated its own fatal flaws by uniting workers in a common cause. Thanks to you, we have all the wealth we need to seize control and eradicate greed. The people are rejecting your bourgeois lies. Real Marxism has never been tried. Equality is the core of my creed. From this one's ability to that one's need. Our healthcare, finance, and industry. Let's collectivize and set ourselves free. Your standard refrain, oh, that's not the real thing. The most common verse all your followers sing. The closer we get to your ideal system, further we go down the road to surfer. The empirical record can't be denied. Your ideas don't work, but they just won't die. Attention! This is not breaking news. Jevons and Menger lit that fuse. Now here comes the bomb via Von Bonn. He blew up your system, exposed the core quirk. The heart of your theory is exploitation of surplus value. That's a bogus equation. You can't explain value by measuring the cost of labor. That theory of value has lost favor. Value is subjective by every measure. One man's trash is another man's treasure. There's no exploitation if two people arrange voluntary exchange. Man, that's not deranged. That bourgeois transaction you diss with a scarf creates benefit for both, so we're both better off. Here's the real problem, the crucial equation. Without private markets, there's no calculation to coordinate courses, allocate resources, incentivize choices because it lacks prices. What crops should I grow? Should this factory go? Should I pick a JO? How would your planet ever know? Your theory is a bundle of confusion. Socialism got crushed by the marginal revolution. This is history's lesson. All we want is progression. Let's pursue our expression. Living free from aggression. So we look for the truth as we tighten the boots. Who's right, who's wrong? Left, right, now the march is on. Are you kidding me, Mises? My immiseration thesis tears you to pieces. Your economy grows, but not our wages. You call that progress? I think it's outrageous. In 1820, everyone was poor until capitalism kicked down the door. Real wage growth, not stagnation, saved 80% of the world from starvation. You kicked down the door, but you locked us out. That's what your free market is all about. Here's what you do. On your next shopping spree, pick up this book by my boy Tommy P. The pie can get bigger, it's not zero sum. Free markets have lifted the lowest incomes. If you really want to help out the poorest nations, encourage peace, trade, and immigration. The earth is boiling, and your solution is more production, more pollution, more cheap trinkets and bigger malls, more fossil fuels, more aerosol. For a problem this big, we need total control. A Green New Deal to save the North Pole. We can't gamble the future on anarchy. Green's not a plan, it's insanity. Your story's bombastic, your rhetoric's strong. There's only one problem, your theory's wrong. The wealthiest countries do the most to conserve half a habit you earn of the Kuznets curve. Only wealthy societies can afford to go green. If you want a better world, see the unseen. Even carbon will bend to creative destruction with entrepreneurship in the means of production. This is history's lesson. The market's a blessing. All we want is progression. Living free from aggression. So we look for the truth.
I'm going to end it there. But that is a really great kind of musical representation of the back and forth kind of ideological battle between socialism and capitalism. And the last video that I wanted to show you guys is one of my favorite YouTube series called The Middle Ground. It basically gets people together who believe in opposing things, right? So there was a middle ground in terms of like um, Black Lives Matter and cops, pro choice, pro life. And it gets them together, asks them a series of questions, and sees if there's some middle ground that we can find. So I'm gonna end class with this video. At the end of the video, we're done. I just wanted to make a couple points about part three. Part three is optional. I'm just going to post three videos, one about the Industrial Revolution, one about the American Revolution, and one about the French Revolution. Um, you'll see in your textbook that they're only mentioned a little bit, right? I think there's only one page on the American and one page on the French. So these videos are a little bit of help to kind of nail home what happened, why they're important. You would have learned about them in previous courses, for example, last year or whenever you took Social 20, you would have talked a lot about the French Revolution. So I'm hoping that this is a bit of a refresher. But I'm going to leave you guys with this video, the middle ground, and I hope you enjoy.
We actually aren't looking for a middle ground with capitalism. We're not looking for a lighter, gentler oppression, exploitation, racism. We are seeking revolution.
My name is Liberty. I'm studying psychology at UCLA. I'm 20 years old.
I'm Sean. I'm 24 years old, and I am in the Socialist Party.
My name's Mimi. 2016, I was the Socialist Party's presidential candidate.
I'm Shay, and I'm with the Socialist Party, and I'm 28.
My name is Jack. I'm 19. I go to community college.
My name's Richard, 19. I go to Cal State Long Beach as a chemistry major with a music minor.
I get my socialists on the left and my capitalists on the right. Humans are inherently selfish.
Selfishness is sort of one word for it, but looking out for yourself, your own survival, and your own gain. And of course, that includes the gain of those you love, is one of the main motivators of people.
A really good way that we could figure out human nature is by comparing it to animal nature and stuff like that. And you see, animals doing whatever they can to survive. It's just culture that has changed us. But I believe at its core that yes, humans, just like any other animal, are selfish.
I work with children, and my experience of working with people who haven't been acculturated or have been into this idea that they need to be selfish all the time are generally not. Every organism has to have a sense of getting resources for itself in order to survive, but that's much different than being selfish, I think.
I think even if you spend any time in a social democracy, let's say you go to Norway and you spend time there where the people see the collective good as tied into their own personal well-being. I think we have so many examples like that. Societies working collectively toward a greater good.
The thing about the Nordic countries, in my opinion, is, since they're very, very ethnically homogenous, they all have very, very similar culture. It's not an accurate representation of, what humans inherently are, because I believe that culture can mask human nature.
So you think that diversity would work against working in harmony toward a collective good?
In diversity, we have different ideas of what good is.
I think competition brings out the best in people.
Especially when, we're competing for something like, let's try to create this compound that could help, the masses in some kind of health relation form. You have all these research labs trying to figure out what's the most efficient way to figure out this process. What's the most efficient way to do this? I think we need more of that sort of sense of competition, especially in the sciences and whatnot.
We frequently hear about the evils of monopolies. It's because, when you control an entire market, why even bother being better at anything? You've got no competition. You've got nothing to strive for, and no one can choose anything else.
I agree with you both on the examples that you gave, but the thing that I'm kind of struggling with, I mean, if we're talking about efficiency, quality, then yeah, I think it brings out the best in people. But then again, it tends to bring about greed.
Y'all do such a great service. It's a trip to me because, as you're likely aware, that there's this growing support for socialism, an economic system that places people over profit, that you're willing to continue to throw out the same talking points that have failed people so miserably. Again, it's a benefit to us. And I guess we should say thank you.
Nice.
If you care about something, if you're passionate about something, you don't need the threat of someone doing it better than you to do the best that you can do. Ask any creative. Competition leads less to excellence and more towards doing whatever you can to edge past the other person.
Today, everyone has the opportunity for success.
All right, if we're talking about the United States and we're talking about financial success, then yes, I would believe so. If we're talking about the world, it doesn't necessarily have to mean financial well-being or like stability. I think that it really just means how you're happy and how you're okay with yourself, and you make a goal and you pursue your goal, and if you fail or achieve
That's exactly what I was thinking. I find that there are so many resources out there that you can enact on. It's just there's some people who just don't do anything about it.
My first thought here with this question is, you got to be fucking kidding me. So many people in this country who solely because they exist, they're under threat, whether it's through, the police, they're just trying to survive.
So everyone's very different. Again, everyone has different opportunities to what they can even consider success. In the US, though, there are a lot of opportunities for most people, though, of course, you can't say all, and there are always those who are extremely unfortunate and should be helped.
I'm sure every one of us has sat in a restaurant before or a Starbucks. Those people work their asses off. Any of these low income jobs are not easy, and they work for pennies. If something goes wrong with their car, they're done. If they have a health problem, they're done.
You're talking about financial success, though. Success is extremely relative and can be defined in many different ways.
In a capitalist society, though, isn't financial success the most important thing?
No.
I've worked in the food industry for a number of years, and I can not say that any one of my companions was ever happy to be doing that.
Yeah, and if they're going to school on top of that, so they're working full time, and on top of that, they're going to school and they're paying school.
I would consider that successful if you can go to school and you can maintain your GPA and you can also be working a part-time job and somehow affording your school. Yeah, you're doing well in life.
Society should help the underprivileged.
That sort of saying, if you give a man a fish, etc., holds true. And also, who should do the helping and how is very important. Not all acts of service are equally beneficial.
I would agree to that. I myself, I'm sorry to use a personal anecdote here, but I've personally dealt with the fact that, giving someone this much aid, they become lazy. My father is an alcoholic. So since due to an injury in his leg, he gets SSI. And what ends up happening is he receives enough SSI to the point where he's not motivated to do anything else beyond just going home, drinking a beer or something like that. And I think, yes, people should help people, especially if they're underprivileged or they need the resources to push them. But to what end? That's the fine line.
But your personal anecdote only covers the small demographic of the alcoholic. Most of the people that
Every example you guys have brought up has been specifically about people who are particularly poor, when most of the country is lower middle class and up. That's
not a fact. But that you would focus on this in a city, one that gives more than half of its budget to the police, in a country that just passed a military bill, a spending bill, that's almost $1 trillion. That money goes to defense contractors.
The government paying for things is not capitalism.
But we're in a capitalist system.
Where the government pays huge amounts of money
the
for
military.
the things you're talking. Yeah, I'm not in favor of those things.
How about instead of spending the money on the military, how about putting those back into basic needs? Healthcare, education, housing.
I agree. The government taking our taxpayer dollars and funneling it into, they're paying for things that the military explicitly says that they don't need. That's not, capitalism is about prices and transparency and choices. When the government takes our money and buys
This
it
is
because
actually an
they
example of
decide.
capitalism working.
That is not,
As
that
a
might
system,
be what you call capitalism, but when
it
I
has
come
to
here saying
accumulate.
I'm a capitalist, I'm not saying I'm in favor of that.
Profit and ethics are opposing motives.
So I think at its core to profit, you have to exploit. And again, there is nothing ethical about exploitation.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think it. I'm really having trouble thinking of a situation where someone could profit off of something without exploitation being in the mix, and I'm running out of ideas.
If you're running a business and you're the one up top, you would obviously walk away with more money if you pay your employees a little bit less.
I think that profit and ethics can be intertwined when seen with the corporate social responsibility module. When they treat their employees better, they give them more benefits, they raise their wages, and in turn, it motivates the workers to work harder. And
treating your employees better than shit is not necessarily ethical. Like raising the quality does not mean that you've raised it to a sufficient standard of treatment. Because if you're paying someone less than a living wage, that is unethical.
all I'm saying is it is to some degree more ethical and can be seen as more ethical to be beating competition by raising the wages of your employees and giving them better benefits.
Also, one must be paid slightly less than they are making in worth for a company for it to be worth it to hire them at all.
If you can't pay your employee the minimum amount of money that they need in order to live, you have no business being in business. And I think also there's a tendency from the conservative side to skew away from sort of objective fact. I mentioned the MIT living wage calculator, right?
Yes.
That's a scientific model.
Wow.
At 29.25. So as a company, if you can't afford to pay your employee a living wage, that's just the minimum that they need in order to live, right? Get the fuck out of business.
Why are we even talking to you when you have all the facts and we don't know anything?
I don't know.
It's hardly worth my time.
Well, we would, sure.
It's hard to really lean towards one side or the other if everyone is just sort of stating all these coherent biases and not accepting any sort of thing from any other particular side, which is why I'm sort of just, I'm trying to understand your side, and I'm trying to grasp really my side of it. And again, going back to sort of that mutual understanding of what can we do next? That sort of mutual understanding needs to be there if we're going to ever continue to see what's best for the U.S.
I think one reason why, you often see like folks on the left, the socialists, communists, anarchists, or et cetera, they're so passionate, and there is anger, seeing the suffering and the oppression and the exploitation, the racism, et cetera, you sort of feel this urgency, like we're constantly under sort of this self-criticism and self-reflection about like, well, how do you package what can be complex ideas into ways that are very palatable? And
That's me every hour.
And I think like if there's a failure on the left, that would be one of them.
I wish that rather than having an agenda that we try to prove and we see ourselves as winning by convincing the opponent, I wish that we could consider winning as finding the middle ground and finding where we're similar and finding the truth. I think if you're in the pursuit of truth, then you've won, contrary to convincing other people that you're right.
Despite that, we definitely disagree on pretty much everything. It's good to note the real common ground here is we as like millennials and Gen Z and stuff, we're actually like talking about this, like whether we were able to convince the other side of anything or not, at least we give a shit about it. This is stuff that we need to talk about. This is stuff that we need to be aware of.
Amen.
Especially given our leaders. So
All right, guys, that's a wrap.
Thank you.
Thanks for sticking around and watching that with me. I really like the middle ground. Again, I hope everything goes well with the rest of chapter 3.